There comes a moment in almost everyone's life when they realize something strange. For years, life felt predictable. You went to school, you attended classes, you studied for exams, and every year there was always a next step waiting for you. Someone always had the answer, someone always had a plan, someone always told you what came next. And without realizing it, you started believing that life worked the same way. Work hard, follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do, and everything will eventually fall into place. But then one day, things change. School ends, college ends, and suddenly nobody is holding the map anymore. For the first time, you are responsible for finding your own direction. And that's when many people discover something they were never prepared for. Life is far less predictable than they imagined, and uncertainty brings something most schools never teach us how to handle: failure. Not the kind of failure that comes with a bad grade, the kind that makes you question yourself. Maybe you studied for months and still didn't get the result you wanted. Maybe you applied for a job and got rejected. Maybe you worked harder than everyone else and still got overlooked. Whatever form it takes, failure has a way of making us feel small. Not because of what happened, but because of the story we tell ourselves afterward. A student fails an exam and starts believing they aren't smart enough. Someone loses an opportunity and starts believing they aren't capable enough. The event itself lasts only a moment, but the story can last for years, and that's where the real problem begins. Because failing at something is normal. Believing that failure defines who you are is not. Imagine a child learning to ride a bicycle. The child falls, again, and again, and again. Nobody watches that child and says, "Maybe riding a bicycle just isn't for you." That would sound ridiculous, because everyone understands that falling is part of learning. But for some reason, when we become adults, we stop giving ourselves the same patience. We fail once, maybe twice, and suddenly we start questioning our future. We start questioning our abilities. We start questioning ourselves. But think about this. If you wanted to learn swimming, would you expect to jump into a pool and become an expert on the first day? Of course not. If you wanted to learn a new language, would you expect to speak fluently after 1 week? No. Then why do we expect perfection from ourselves in the most difficult parts of life? Why do we expect ourselves to know exactly what we're doing when nobody else does either? The truth is, failure is not a sign that you're incapable. Most of the time, it's a sign that you're learning. And learning is rarely comfortable. The people we admire are not people who avoided failure. They are people who learned how to survive it. They learned how to separate their identity from their outcomes. They understood something important. Failure is an event, not an identity. You can fail an exam without being a failure. You can fail a business without being a failure. And that distinction can change your entire life. Because once failure becomes feedback instead of proof, everything changes. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you start asking, "What can this teach me?" And suddenly, failure stops being the end of the story. It becomes part of the process. Unfortunately, failure isn't the only lesson life teaches us. There is another lesson that often hurts even more: rejection. Almost everyone remembers their first real rejection. Maybe it was from a college, maybe it was from a company, maybe it was from someone they cared deeply about. Maybe it was a group of people they wanted to belong to. Whatever it was, it probably hurt more than expected. Because rejection feels personal. It feels like someone looked at you and decided that you weren't enough. And when that happens, your mind starts creating stories. Stories that sound like, "I'm not attractive enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough." But here's something most people realize much later. Rejection often says far less about your value than you think. Imagine walking into a shoe store. You try on a pair of shoes. They don't fit. Does that mean the shoes are bad? No. Does it mean your feet are bad? Of course not. It simply means there wasn't a match. Life works the same way more often than we realize. Not every opportunity is meant for you. Not every person is meant for you. Not every path is meant for you. And that's okay. The mistake many people make is treating rejection as a verdict, as if one person's opinion suddenly determines their worth. But your value does not increase when someone chooses you, and it does not decrease when someone doesn't. Think about all the opportunities you've turned down, all the people you've said no to, all the decisions you've made. Were those things worthless? No, they simply weren't right for you at that moment. The same thing happens in reverse. Many rejections are not judgments. They're mismatches, different goals, different timing, different circumstances, yet we carry them like permanent labels. And that's why rejection hurts for much longer than it should. Not because of what happened, but because of what we made it mean. The people who grow the most are not the people who never get rejected. They are the people who refuse to let rejection decide who they are. Because every meaningful life involves rejection. Every successful person has been rejected. The difference is that they kept moving. Not because rejection didn't hurt, but because they understood that rejection is not the end. Most of the time, it's simply redirection. And maybe that's one of the hardest lessons of growing up. Life will disappoint you. People will leave. Opportunities will disappear. Plans will fail. But none of those things get the final word. Not unless you let them. Failure is not the end. Rejection is not the end. Sometimes they're simply the beginning of a chapter you don't understand yet.